a righteous king, a divine promise of peace, and a brutal death on the battlefield. What happens when the most faithful ruler in history receives a prophecy of protection, but chooses to ignore God's voice coming from the mouth of his enemy? This is the story of King Josiah, the reformer who cleansed a nation, the warrior who defied empires, and the man whose single act of disobedience unraveled everything. You've never heard this story before. Seventh century BCE, the kingdom of Judah is dying. For over a century, the mighty Assyrian Empire has crushed everything in its path. They've already destroyed the northern kingdom of Israel, scattering its people to the winds. But the real enemy isn't outside Judah's borders. It's within. Under King Manasseh and his son Amon, the nation has plunged into spiritual darkness. Then in 640 BCE, 8-year-old Josiah becomes king after his father is assassinated by his own servants. Nobody expected what would happen next. At just 16 years old, something awakens in Josiah's heart. While surrounded by idol-worshipping advisors, this teenager begins seeking the God of his ancestor David. By age 20, he's launched the most aggressive religious reform in Judah's history. Pagan altars demolished, idol priests, their bones burned on their own altars. The horrific practice of child sacrifice permanently banned. But the real turning point comes in year 18 of his reign, during temple renovations. High priest Hilkiah makes a discovery that will change everything. Hidden in the temple walls, a scroll.
"I have found the book of the law,"
he tells the royal secretary. When the contents are read to King Josiah, his reaction is immediate and devastating. He tears his royal robes, a sign of deep mourning and terror. This isn't just any book. This is God's covenant with his people, lost and forgotten for generations, and it reveals that Judah stands under divine judgment. Josiah's response is unprecedented. He gathers the entire nation, every citizen from the greatest to the least, and reads the entire book aloud. Then he leads them in renewing their covenant with God. The climax, the greatest Passover celebration since the time of the judges. The king personally provides 30,000 lambs and 3,000 cattle from his own herds. But even in this moment of triumph, a shadow looms. Terrified by the warnings in the book of the law, Josiah sends his most trusted officials to consult Huldah, a prophetess living in Jerusalem's 2nd district. Her message from God is a devastating paradox.
"I will bring disaster on this place and its people. My anger burns like fire and will not be quenched."
The judgment is final. Generations of sin have sealed Judah's fate. But then comes the personal message for Josiah.
Because Josiah's heart was responsive and he humbled himself before the Lord, he will be gathered to his grave in peace.
A promise of peace, protection from the coming judgment, death by natural causes, not by violence. Josiah has received what every king dreams of, a divine guarantee of safety. But in 609 BCE, everything changes. The Assyrian Empire is collapsing, and Egypt's Pharaoh Necho II is marching north to help his Assyrian allies at the Battle of Carchemish. To reach the battle, Necho's army must pass through Josiah's newly expanded territory. The natural choke point? The ancient fortress of Megiddo. And here, the most faithful king in Judah's history makes a decision that will cost him everything. He chooses to fight. As Pharaoh Necho approaches Megiddo, he does something unprecedented. He sends messengers to King Josiah with a warning. Did you catch that? The pagan Pharaoh claims to be on a mission from the God of Israel. For a king who has spent his entire reign learning to recognize God's voice through His word, this should be a moment of careful discernment. Instead, the biblical text records one of the most tragic statements in all of Scripture.
I have no quarrel with you, King of Judah. God has commanded me to hurry. Refrain from meddling with God who is with me, or He will destroy you.
Josiah did not heed the words of Necho from the mouth of God. Why would the most righteous king in Judah's history ignore a direct warning from God? Perhaps Josiah couldn't believe that God would speak through a pagan Pharaoh. Perhaps his nationalism blinded him to spiritual truth. Or maybe, just maybe, he misunderstood his prophecy of protection. Remember, Huldah promised he would die in peace and not see the disaster coming to Judah. Did Josiah interpret this as a divine invincibility power-up? Did he think he was untouchable? Whatever his reasoning, Josiah makes his choice. He disguises himself and leads his army to Megiddo. The most faithful king in Judah's history is about to face the deadliest consequences of a single act of disobedience. The stage is set for tragedy. The armies clash at Megiddo. Josiah, disguised among his troops, leads the charge against the Egyptian forces. Then it happens. Egyptian archers find their mark. "The king is badly wounded," his servants cry. They quickly remove him from his war chariot and place him in a second chariot, rushing him toward Jerusalem. But it's too late. Either on the journey or shortly after reaching the holy city, King Josiah, the reformer, the covenant keeper, the man after God's own heart, dies. The prophet Jeremiah composes a lamentation. The entire nation mourns. Their last great hope is gone. The irony is devastating. Josiah died trying to prevent Egypt from helping Assyria, but Egypt's mission failed anyway. The Assyrian Empire fell just as God had planned. Josiah's death didn't change the geopolitical outcome. It only ensured that Judah's greatest king wouldn't be there to lead them through what came next. Within months, Josiah's son is deposed by the very Pharaoh who killed his father. The spiritual reforms crumble. The people return to their idols. And just as Huldah prophesied, the judgment comes. But Josiah mercifully never saw it. So what are we to make of this tragic story? Did God's prophecy fail? Not at all. Look closely at Huldah's words. She promised Josiah would not see the disaster, meaning the specific judgment coming on Judah through Babylon. She promised he would be gathered in peace. Not that he would die peacefully, but that he would be buried with his ancestors before his nation's peace was shattered. Every word was fulfilled. Josiah died before the exile, and his death, while violent, came through his own choice, not through the judgment God was bringing on the land. The tragedy isn't that God failed Josiah. The tragedy is that Josiah failed to discern God's immediate will for his life. Josiah's story isn't just ancient history. It's a mirror for every person of faith who has ever struggled with the tension between divine promises and human choices. It teaches us that righteousness doesn't equal immunity from consequences, that past faithfulness doesn't excuse present disobedience, that even the most sincere believers can misinterpret God's will when pride, nationalism, or personal ambition cloud their judgment. Yet Josiah remains one of history's greatest examples of wholehearted devotion to God. His story isn't ultimately about failure. It's about the beauty and tragedy of human choice within divine sovereignty. He was a good man in a bad time, whose legacy transcends his final mistake. The story of King Josiah forces us to ask uncomfortable questions about our own lives. Are we truly listening for God's voice, even when it comes from unexpected sources? Are we confusing past blessings with present immunity? What did you think of Josiah's story? Have you ever heard it told this way before? Let me know in the comments below. And if this epic tale of faith, prophecy, and tragic choice resonated with you, make sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell. There are so many incredible biblical stories that never get the attention they deserve. Until next time, keep seeking the deeper truths hidden in history's greatest book.